And we should be about to stream.
Check it on my end, just make sure.
Looking like it's good on my end.
Yeah, I mean, it's been relatively, bug-free after we got it up and running. I wouldn't say the streaming service was the hardest part. It was getting the old stuff you had in Zoom unplugged.
Yeah, Zoom to stop bringing something back. Oh.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, we're good.
All right, Ron, you do open.
Okay. Shout outs, Blake.
Okay. And Greg, you got my email about the rebrand?
I did. Yeah. We've got that process for you.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, delegating is the easy part.
Yeah. Oh, anyway. Oh, there we are.
And you guys do realize this show will be out of date in about 4 hours, right?
Less than that.
I actually heard one podcast that said that had to put a disclaimer on it because they said, while we were recording, everything changed.
Yeah, it was that the pause, the 90-day pause.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing today?
Hey, Jordan. Good.
How you doing there, Greg?
Fantastic, Jordan. How are you?
Doing well. Let me go ahead and get some loves for everybody real quick. I'll start with you, Ron. Can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome. Sounding great. Ed, can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Awesome. Sounding great. We got just over 2.5 minutes here until showtime.
And this does go out on LinkedIn Live too, doesn't it?
Yep.
I'm sorry, YouTube.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, plus the Voice America stream on their YouTube channel. So it's live in lots of places. Yeah. Although I find that our audience, when I look at the statistics, are largely ex-Twitter based.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Surprised me at first because I would think that YouTube would lend itself to live streaming more easily than Twitter does. But we've over the years leaned heavily towards Twitter as a platform, for the live show.
Oh yeah, true.
Right, so that's where the audience is. Plus, it might be that X is sending out notifications, whereas YouTube doesn't send out notifications unless you ding the bells and ring the chimes and do all the things to tell YouTube that you want them to tell you when someone is live. The video views after live they favor YouTube heavily, right? But in the moment, it's Twitter.
All very interesting.
Well, to me, probably
not. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me. All right.
All right, about 1 minute.
I had something else for you too, Greg, but I can't remember what it is. So, I'll just randomly email you during the weekend.
You've got 57 minutes.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Cool. I will be in the background.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Have a great show, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks.
About 30 seconds until showtime.
Cool.
All right, coming up to showtime. You ready for your counting?
All right. Yep.
You bet.
Let's do it.
Have a great show. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise, Business and the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and threshold colleague, Ed Kless. On today's show, folks, we're talking about Juche for Dummies. Why self-sufficiency sucks. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
It's going good, Ron. Dude, we oftentimes have to explain our title, and usually it's me who comes up with it. Usually it's me. Now, in this case, it was a combination of the intern and you. So I will leave you to describe what Juche is.
Juche is North Korea's, and literally translated, I think it means self-reliance, not self-sufficiency, self-reliance.
Right.
But Juche was a philosophy, a doctrine that Kim Il-sung developed. He was the president, and in fact, he is still the eternal president of North Korea. He founded the country, basically, and he delivered the philosophy in a 1955 speech. However, I think it was developed prior to that. That's just the first time he publicized it to the people. And it means basically self-reliance. I mean, it's an independent stance in ideology, independence in politics, self-sufficiency in economy, and self-reliance in defense. One of the iconic structures in North Korea and Pyongyang is the Juche Tower, which was built in, I forget the year, 1991 or 2 or something. It's got the exact amount of bricks as the number of days that Kim Il-sung was alive at the time it was built.
Sure, it does.
So they say, and they even reset their calendar to Juche 1912 being year 0, and so it's a big part of North Korea's philosophy. But basically, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and economy basically is another word or another term for poverty.
I was going to say, self-sufficiency, what's not to love, Ron? Everything that is North Korea is just wonderful. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if self-sufficiency worked, North Korea would be Monaco. Instead, as somebody said, it's Etsy with gulags, which is an hysterical line. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, North Korea has no imports they do, but it's mostly aid, and they have no exports. So they should be flourishing according to Trump. This is just such backward economics. I don't even know where to start with this. So I just thought we'd compare it to Juche, but it's really mercantilism. What's going on here?
Right.
The idea that exports are good and imports are bad. But it's usually presented as, the protectionists, they're the realists because, we need fair trade. We live in the real world where other countries are ripping us off or charging us tariffs that we don't charge them and all of that. But what's really going on is free trade is how we all live our lives, and it's actually free trade that is grounded in economic reality, and it's protectionism and tariffs that's grounded in utopianism and central planning.
Yes, but let's back up. There's a lot to unpack just of what you've just said, and we're going to try and take this all the way through as best we can in this episode. But first, Ron, I do want to make a disclaimer. I have been officially diagnosed by many people on Facebook as now having Trump derangement syndrome officially. So they've come out. They've told me now their diagnosis, and this is all because of my stance with not even necessarily regard to the tariffs per se. It's actually it's even a level beyond that for me. I really don't think it's a good idea that one person has the capability of causing this much disruption in world economics by just claiming things in an executive order. And I think this is a big problem. We took a big step toward tyranny in the past week. It's just not a good idea, regardless of this. And I said, the way I set it up is the same thing with Joe Biden and for loan forgiveness. He forgave $100 billion or something in loans, or tried to, before it was struck down by the courts. I don't think it's a good idea that one person or an administration is capable of doing that. This is a bad idea. These are further and further steps towards tyranny. We are really going to get to Juche at one point. At a certain point, that's where all of this leads. And that's my biggest concern. So for that, I have Trump derangement syndrome, apparently.
Well, I looked it up in the new DSM manual, Ed.
Yeah.
The diagnostic manual. And Trump derangement syndrome, when it comes to tariffs, basically means that you're an economic literate. Just so you know. This is the closest thing we have to a king.
Yes.
Which we fought a revolution over. And this is why our founders gave the taxing authority, which is a unbelievably powerful authority. The tax is to destroy, if you take it too far, right? And they put that in the House of Representatives. All taxing and spending has to come from there, originate in the people's house. And the only person I know that's out there talking about it at this level, at your level, is Senator Rand Paul. He's got a bill before the Senate, the no taxation without representation clause. I just read his article. He basically said the same thing you do, that this is one man rule. Our founders didn't set it up this way. It's time for Congress to reassert its authority and take back this power from the presidency. And it's Congress's fault for devolving this power to the presidency.
Agreed. Congress yielded for certain its power, and it just to me it's just scary stuff, because where does this stop? Where does this stop? If because what you have to follow the logic here of where we live in a state of war, we are being invaded. There's a state of war that's happening. Therefore, I have all of these emergency powers. Well, what happens when there's a future President Ocasio-Cortez who says we now live in a state of war against the environment? Right? We have the war on global warming. I can invoke all of these special powers just because we're in this state of war.
Yeah, whether it's the fentanyl crisis or the fact that we're running deficits, which is the flimsiest argument for these emergency powers. You're right. And when somebody on the left comes in, they're just going to say the exact same thing for climate change or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I think everybody is missing in all of this. That's really the troubling portion, is this ever encroaching towards somebody at some point saying, I am King Kim Il-sung, and I have ultimate authority over everything.
This is what I declare. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Ed, that, so there's that, you're right, and which is, very high level, that this is closest thing we'll get to a king. But I think the other thing is, just from a pure policy perspective, and I'm talking about economic effects, you couldn't fill a Mini Cooper with economists who agree with tariffs. You just couldn't. Not among real serious economists, academic economists. I mean, you could put them all. You could put all the economists in a Mini Cooper and still have room for a portly chauffeur of people who agree with this. This is just a ridiculous policy. We've done it before in the past, and it hasn't worked. And it makes us poor because it reduces our choices. It raises our prices. And the other thing I don't think people understand, besides those two things, is, we can sit around and talk at a macroeconomic level about trade deficits and surpluses, other countries ripping us off, hollowing out our manufacturing base, all this BS, and it is BS. But they don't understand that governments don't trade. People do. These deficits and surpluses that we run with approximately 190 other countries are made up of probably trillions of decisions, because half of what we import is an intermediate good that goes into stuff that we produce here that goes back out. So, and the other thing I don't think people are fully aware of is the so-called trade deficits are only goods. They have nothing to say about services. And we run, I looked it up, nearly a $300 billion surplus in services with the rest of the world. Why? Because we kick ass with services, including digital services, by the way, like software and things like that. And none of that is factored into this conversation. None of it.
And it's 75-80% of the economy is services. That's
right. We do about 12 or 14% of our GDP in imports and exports in the United States. In fact, we're one of the lowest dependent on international trade of all developed nations of the G20. Mm-hmm. Only about 12 or 14%. And so, and the idea that the United States has been ripped off. Let's just put this in perspective. The WTO, the World Trade Organization, began in 1995. So let's just kind of use that for a baseline. We could go back to GATT, right, and post World War II, or even Bretton Woods or whatever. But let's stick with the WTO founding in 1995. At that time, world GDP was $38 trillion. In 2024, it's $110 trillion. The USA was $8 trillion in GDP when WTO was formed. Today, it's $30 trillion, a 275% increase. The idea that the United States of America is being ripped off by other countries is insane. It's, what would Jonah say? It's colossally stupid, or incandescently stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, and Ed, if it's true that we're being ripped off with the countries that we run deficits with, if they're really ripping us off, what about the 100 countries that we have surpluses with? Are we ripping them off? You can only think that if you believe governments trade. If you think humans trade, people trade, there's no way you can think that, because every decision is you bought it because more value than the price you paid, and both sides are better off.
We've proven this over and over. Go back to the show that we did on the trading game. Whenever we did that, we would do the example of each of the groups. We would call it table A, table B, table C. And then we would say, okay, imagine if we just changed the name from table A, we're going to call table A Argentina. We're going to call table B Brazil. We're going to call table C China. Would you care if you were running a trade deficit between the tables? And everybody's like, no. Doesn't matter because of people trade. Well, Ron, we're just getting rolling on this, and hopefully we'll be able to explain this to all of our audience who is interested. But right now we're up against our first break. I want to remind you that you can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Of course, the website is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. We would love for you to become a Patreon member. Go out to patreon.com/TSOE. There you can get the show commercial free, as well as our bonus episodes, which we do after each show. But right now, a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Okay, and I was going to say Blake, right? It was Blake is the shout out. Okay, let me bring us back. I want to.
Yeah. No, I kind of dominated that.
No, that's okay. That's all right. No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Take us wherever you want to go. I'm just loaded for bear. We can go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna back it up a little bit. I'm gonna back us up a little bit. So
good. Yeah, good. I would like to as well.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let me take a sip of water. All right, Jordan, let's roll.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And I should have mentioned that as a Patreon member at a certain level, you can get a shout out, just like Blake Oliver did at Earmark CPE. Check him out at earmarkcpe.com. But Ron, I want to share this with you. In every country, it always is and must be the interest of the great body of the people to buy whatever they want of those who are willing to sell it cheapest. This proposition is so very manifest that it seems ridiculous to take any pains to prove it, nor could it ever have been called into question, had not the interest sophistry of merchants and manufacturers confounded the common sense of mankind. Adam Smith, 1776, on Wealth of Nations.
Yep. Beautiful.
This is not hard.
It is not.
This is not. Yeah. This is not hard. Just if you're the head of a household, you would never attempt to buy or to make at home what you can buy someplace else for significantly cheaper, unless it's your hobby. Okay, fine. You want to do like make tables or something as a hobby? Great. But you would never do that. I would never say, you know what, I really need to mow my own grass because I've got to do that instead of doing this podcast.
Right.
Never say that.
Yep. You run a deficit with your lawnmower.
And what is prudent in that situation just is also prudent as you get to larger and larger groups. So my neighborhood we should not be pedaling our bicycles to manufacture the electricity that we need for our neighborhood. We buy it from someplace outside of our neighborhood and they bring it in via wire. Every concentric circle that you go larger and larger out on, it still does not make sense to do for that group. Bananas is the greatest example. Why? I'm sure we are at a trade deficit with some country that's importing bananas to us, and we then slap a 10% tariff on them because we want bananas.
That we would have to set up greenhouses in Minnesota to make. I mean, I know. And just on Adam Smith, Ed, he also said nothing can be more absurd than this whole doctrine of the balance of trade. And he pointed out we are the only creature possessing the capacity to produce more than we consume to satisfy our own needs. Nobody ever saw a dog make a fair and deliberate exchange of one bone for another with another dog. We're the only animal, creature, species, whatever, that does this. Mm-hmm. And hence our wealth. This is what it's all based on. We live free trade every day in our lives. We run a deficit with our barber, our grocery store, our CPA. They don't, my CPA doesn't buy anything for me, right? But I pay them. It's just, there's so many, Henry Hazlitt, and if folks want to read there's a couple of books we're going to talk about. One of them is Henry Hazlitt, Economics in One Lesson. And he wrote this, and I love this. He said, the same people who can be clear-headed and sensible when the subject is one of domestic trade can be incredibly emotional and muddle-headed when it becomes one of foreign trade. That is so true. I mean, one of the reasons that this country is so damn wealthy is because we created the world's first free trade zone among the states. Right? And, Jonah points this out. He says the Federalist Papers discuss at great length the need to end the system of internal tariffs and duties imposed by the various states under the Articles of Confederation. Madison notes in Federalist 42 that allowing states to tax each other's production would nourish unceasing animosities and not improbably terminate in serious interruptions of the public tranquility. In Federalist 12, Alexander Hamilton says the prosperity of commerce is now perceived and acknowledged by all enlightened statesmen to be the most useful as well as the most productive source of national wealth. So why is it right for countries to, impose tariffs, and it's not right for the United States? And as Dominic Pino points out, various states in this country are some of the largest economies in the world. So why wouldn't you impose tariffs within the 50 states?
We don't even track it. We don't even track it. Thank God.
I know. I agree. Thank God. And I'm not convinced we should track it at the international level because I think it leads to really crappy decision making, like you're seeing with Trump. I mean, that formula he put out to figure out the retaliatory tariffs was a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke.
It was precisely wrong. But it looked good because it had Greek, and
had Greek letters in it. But two of which, by the way, if you dig down into the math of it, like literally canceled each other out.
We could go through the formula if you wanted, but blah, blah, blah. I don't get how people can't see this. Autarky, complete self-sufficiency, like the Juche philosophy from North Korea, would be a poor, nasty, brutish, and short life. Imagine if you had to do your own health care and cut your own hair and build your own house and make your own computer. Good luck.
Yeah. All right. Let me try and steel man, because this is part of the problem, Ron, is everybody I begin to get into a debate over completely changes their what their focus is. So here I'm going to try and channel some of those folks. But Ron, this is really about national security. We need to make sure that we're not bringing in Chinese goods that are, the equipment is spying on our own people and sending stuff back to the People's Republic. That's what this is really about.
But that doesn't explain the tariffs on Israel or Canada and Mexico and all of our other allies around the world, South Korea, Japan. We could go down a very long list of allies. Now, I think we can have a serious debate about China and tariffs. And if that's all this was, even at 125%, I'd be against it, but I could live with it. Just like Scott Lincecum said, if we can get 91% towards free trade, I can live with the other 9%, but this is not justifiable on national security grounds at all.
Right. All of it is like I said, there might be, and that's it. There might be a piece of it that you can begin to justify. I would disagree, but there's a piece of it you can begin to justify, but you can't justify everything with all this. And if it's the other thing that I don't understand, if it's the negotiating table, why the hell didn't when the EU said, you know what, we'll go to zero. We'll go to zero if you must. What?
And Trump rejected it.
That would have been the art of the deal. I would have been like, dude, great, let's move on. Let's
take that as a win.
Victory and move. Let's do it.
27 countries in one fell swoop. But look, he ditched the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Yeah. That would have lowered tariffs to zero amongst all those nations.
Well, and by the way, they're still trading with one another at zero. We're the only ones that aren't.
I know. Trump was asked about this. Somebody asked him, are these tariffs permanent or negotiable? And his answer was, they can both be true. No, they really can't. Jeez. And how anybody can defend this just blows my mind. Plus the other thing, Ed, if it's really a national security concern, tariffs are the wrong way to approach it. What you do is you ban the products like we did with Huawei and other things, or you forbid trade. Now, look, we forbid trade with North Korea, and yet, have you ever noticed they get Mercedes and Cadillacs and the cognac that, Kim Jong-un likes and all of that? We live in an international world.
Yeah.
Okay, keep steel manning, because these steel mans are pretty damn weak, I have to say.
Well, it's the fact that it keeps shifting around, right? But Ron, we have to lower the income tax. Don't you understand that if we can collect the tariffs on this is going to allow us to significantly not get rid of the income tax, but it's also we're going to get out of our debt. We're going to be completely debt free. Not only the deficit's going to be gone, but the debt is going to be gone if we use tariffs. And so that's that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so that assumes that people are still going to be buying everything that they're buying now, and we're going to run the same deficits with the same countries, and therefore little protections going on of domestic. So, and the other thing is, if we don't buy as much, because when you tax something, you get less of it, then you're not raising any revenue. So which is it?
Yeah. Well, but Ron, it's going to bring jobs back to the United States. It's going to bring jobs back. It's going to bring, we need more jobs back here in the US of A. So this is going to bring these jobs back. It's already working. It's already happening.
Yeah. And this is another massively misunderstood thing. Don Bedreau, who we've had on the show, pointed out that NAFTA lost 1 million jobs for the U.S. in its first 20 years between 1994 and 2014. And he said it took NAFTA 2 decades to kill as many jobs as we churn in 18 days. You know, what people don't understand when they see, 200,000 jobs were created this month. No, 1.2 million jobs were created and 1 million were destroyed. And that happens practically every month. It's in the millions, Ed. We're only looking at the net.
Mm-hmm.
And he points out the so-called China shock, which took 2.4 million jobs in 13 years. That's as many as we destroy in 41 days. So the idea that we're going to get jobs back in manufacturing, I just go back to Dave Chappelle. We don't want to make Nikes. We want to wear them. What kind of jobs are going to come back? The other thing that really frustrates me about this is this idea that manufacturing's been hollowed out and the elites on the coast are living, large, and the middle of the country's been absolutely hollowed out. We produce $2 trillion in manufacturing output. By itself, that's the 8th largest economy in the world. In 2020, we were the 4th largest manufacturer in steel, we were 2nd in automotives, and we were 1st in aerospace. We produce 16% of global output, second only to China, and that's only because China has 4 times the population. U.S., and I'm going to say this very slow so people can get it, U.S. manufacturing output is larger than Japan, Germany, South Korea, combined. Output is, you measure output, not jobs, as a way to measure a sector's importance. And the idea that, because 25% of GDP in 1971 was in manufacturing, today it's 10%. So we are 90% a service/knowledge /transformation economy, right? The idea that 1971 was the high watermark for wages is incredibly stupid. Veronique Derougy wrote about this. She said, think about manufacturing in a factory. Think about lost fingers, bad backs, hernias. She goes, these factories weren't wellness spas. And even today, there's 482,000 manufacturing jobs open as of January 2025. No kid is going into manufacturing. The median age in the people that work in factories is 44 years old. 8% of the workers in factories today are under 25%. And she gives a really good example. She said the unemployment rate for sociology degree holders is 6.7%. They make a median salary of $45,000. What could they make working in the manufacturing plant? $100,000. They're not doing it. Why not? So the National Association of Manufacturers said in the next decade, we're gonna need 3.8 million people to fill manufacturing jobs, and they estimate 50% of them will go unfulfilled. 1.9 million jobs because people don't want to work in factories.
But they should, Ron. We should just fire all of the federal workforce. They'll go work in factories. That's what they'll do.
And it's the younger people rejecting it, the very people that, they think need these jobs to step on the first rung of the economic ladder and all that and climb up. But we're a service knowledge economy. It just doesn't make sense. It's the same thing in manufacturing that happened to the farmers.
All right. Well, we got to take our break. Maybe when we get back, we'll talk about Wile E. Coyote. In the meantime, you can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Of course, the website is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. We'd love for you to go out and rate this podcast. Check out ratethispodcast.com/TSOE. And of course, you may know that Ron and I now have a new business that we are working on together called Threshold. Check that out at thresholdnow.com. We've got a couple membership levels, and we'd love to work with any and all of you out there. So check out thresholdnow.com for more. In the meantime, a word from our sponsors.
All right, all clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Greg, any feedback? Or people just scared?
You guys are off the rails.
None that I see right now. You guys are all clear. You're speaking truth to power. So what are they going to say?
We got TDS. We both of us got TDS.
did congratulate people for having TDS because it means you're economically literate. That was a good one.
Oh, Lord. All right. Are you ready, Ron? No. Okay. I'll give you a few more. That's fine. And you can bring us back when you are.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about Juche for Dummies, Why Self-Sufficiency Sucks. Ed, we should write that book. It'd be a good. I think it's Wiley that does the Dummy series, so I haven't.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe we should try that. But let's point this out too. The gains from trade are what we import, not what we export. Right? We send green pieces of paper to people, and they send us goods and services.
Actually, it's not even green pieces of paper anymore. It's just it's just digital. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's the closest thing you get to writing letters to the North Pole and get stuff. But the purpose of production is consumption. The more imports we acquire for fewer exports, the wealthier we are, either as individuals or as a country. And other countries obviously face the same reality. Thomas Sowell also points out this in Basic Economics, another book I would highly recommend people read. And he's got a section in that book on international economics where he talks about this with quite a few examples. He said, but in general, international deficits and surpluses have had virtually no correlation with the performance of most nations' economy. Germany and France have had international trade surpluses while their unemployment rates were in double digits. Japan's post-war rise to economic prominence on the world stage included years when it ran deficits as well as when it ran surpluses. Same thing with the United States. And yet, through it all, we become the wealthiest, economy in the world. Now we're 50% greater in GDP per capita than the European Union. Before 15 years ago, we were damn near even. And now we're 50% higher. This idea that we're being ripped off by the rest of the world is ludicrous.
Yeah. All right. This is from Kevin Williamson, again, also previous guest on the Soul of Enterprise twice, I believe. So maybe it's time to have him back on. Anyway, he says this in his recent post: tariffs do one thing, and are intended to do that one thing and nothing else. They give politically connected domestic firms an opportunity to raise their prices by removing lower price substitutes from the marketplace entirely, or by putting upward pressure on the price of those substitutes. Now, because of this, and I think this is an important point to make, tariffs in and of themselves aren't inflationary. Now let's define inflation. Inflation is when too much money is chasing after too few goods and services, right? So, and Friedman would say it's always and everywhere a monetary phenomena. Yes, and I believe we are correct in saying that is mostly the cause of inflation is when you print money, right, or really borrow it and then put it into circulation. But the intent of tariffs is to lower the amount of goods that are going to be in circulation in the U.S. So if inflation is defined as too much currency chasing after too few goods, well, there's two ways to affect it. One, too much currency, yes, but also too few goods. So it's not that is not just a temporary price shock or a temporary supply. That is perhaps inflationary. Now, is it going to be a major cause of inflation? Don't know, but it's at least partially. It will have some effect truly on inflation.
And it's going to affect different products differently depending on the demand for those products and the elasticity and all that crap. Well, but it's a tax, Ed. So tariff is a tax.
Okay, so let's deal with that. That's the other. It's not immediately a Steelman, but it's the other argument that I hear. Ron, it's these other countries that are going to pay this tariff, or they're not going to pay the tariff. They're actually just going to take a haircut on their price. So in other words, they used to export it to us for $1, and if we put a 25% tariff on it, that would make it $1.25. Yes, someone in the U.S. will pay that $25, but ultimately what's going to happen is the exporter in the other country is going to have to lower its price, and they're going to take a haircut out of their profit in order for us to sell into our market. So it's not going to be us that pays this. It's actually going to be these other countries.
No, we're going to pay it because they're not going to lower. They're not going to absorb the full 100% of whatever the tariff is. They're just not, and we have empirical evidence. We've seen this play out before. When you slap a 25% tariff on imported cars, like we did with Japan, guess what? The prices go up by 25%. Or what Japan did specifically, and this was in the 80s and 90s. They just fully loaded every car. There was no stripped down versions. It came with everything. And that's how they justified the price increase. So they load the options, which is low cost for them, but it justified the higher price. There's all sorts of games that are played around that. But if people don't think Americans are going to pay this tax, they're crazy. Of course you are. There's nobody else to pay it except the buyer.
So, which leads to the other question. So, why do other countries do it then, Ron? Why do other countries put tariffs on our stuff?
For the same political reasons that we put the high tariffs on some of our things, like agricultural products that come in. And if you go down the list of forget the manual that has all the tariffs by category and product and all of that. I mean, you'll see golf carts and negligees and all sorts of weird things. The tariffs are unbelievable. A lot of it is lobbying, right? And concentrated benefits and diffuse costs. This is why we give sugar subsidies and pay 4 times more than the world price for sugar. Or it's 2 times maybe, because of the subsidies we give to the farmers. And the same strongman argument from the other side is, okay, yeah, the other countries impose tariffs, but that makes them economically illiterate. I don't know why we'd want to copy that. The second thing is, well, what about we need to protect our infant industries? And then they cite Alexander Hamilton. They'll pull some.
Yes.
Quote, oh, well, you need to give these infants space to grow, and if we didn't have that, the steel industry is not an infant industry anymore. It's a hacking, wheezing old man that needs to be weaned off these things. I mean, the whole infant industry argument is so ridiculous.
What exactly infant industry are we in, Ron, that's manufacturing? Like AI, okay, but
yeah, AI. So should we protect AI? I mean, yeah. Somebody pointed out, I forget who it was. Was it Lincecum? Somebody made the point that AI is one of the few things. Oh, it was on Tyler Cowen. AI is one of the few techs that didn't come out of government, DARPA, and no, it was completely the private sector that did AI. The other thing, Ed, is what would happen if. And we could say China, but we could pick any country, came up with a cure for cancer. Mm-hmm. Would we be better off not buying it? Because it would add to the trade deficit? Under Trump's mathematical formula, we would.
Slap a 10% on that at least. Well, no, 125% because it's coming from China.
Yeah. So that just shows you how stupid this all is. I mean, can't even believe we're taking this seriously. One country, Burundi, sells us coffee worth about $845,000 a month. That was January's figure. Uh-huh. Now, the U.S. produces 11.5 million pounds of coffee. That was 2023. Ed, that's 282 of what we consume in a year. So the idea. So are we protecting Hawaii coffee growers by keeping Burundi coffee out of America? Or we produce no coffee. Where the hell would we get it?
Yeah. I also want to deal with this illusion of reciprocity, because that's what you're hearing come out of a lot of the press releases. Oh, well, this is done for reciprocal. We're just putting the tariff on them that they put on us. That is not what's happened at all. No. At all. It's not, oh, they had a 30% tariff on us, so we're putting a 30% tariff on them. It is based on the total output of that country, and it's the trade deficit that they're trying to build in reciprocity for. And in the coffee example, it makes no sense. What else are we going to? Burundi's going to bring in coffee. What else? I mean, what else can we export? Like, there's no possible way for us to get as much back out to them as they give us from a coffee perspective. So of course they're going to be at we're going to be at a trade deficit with them. Of course.
Yeah, the retaliatory thing is just so stupid as well, because you take a country like South Korea or Israel, and they don't have tariffs on our stuff, and yet we imposed the baseline and even higher before he paused,
right.
the retaliation. So just as an example, Ed, Afghanistan, and they send us, figs and carpets and, a couple of other things. They got a 10% tariff under the old formula. Mm-hmm. Israel gets a 17% tariff, and they're our ally. And by the way, our military couldn't run without Israeli inputs. Our medical devices couldn't run without Israeli input. I mean, so much of their stuff goes into the stuff that we use. I mean, the high tech stuff like rockets, guided missiles, and stuff like that. And we're putting a 17% tariff on them. And another glaring omission from Trump's little cardboard thing of all those retaliatory tariffs, that he held up. Did you notice a country that was missing? And no, it's not North Korea.
Russia.
Yeah. What about Russia? What about Russia? Now, I know we don't buy much from Russia, right? Because of all the sanctions and that we have on, but still, you would think that they would have something put on them. Senator Tom Tillis asked the U.S. Trade Representative, I forget his name, Greer. He asked him, whose throat do I get to choke if this turns out to be wrong? And my answer is, how about your own?
Yeah, no, exactly.
People created this by devolving your constitutional Article 1 powers to the presidency over, decades. And just crazy.
Yeah, no, it is. Well, but Ron, the good news is that we do now have, reciprocity with the herd in McDonald Islands. I'm sure you've heard about this.
Yes.
So
with the island with the penguins and no people. Yes. There's a great meme going around of J.D. Vance in the White House Oval Office pointing at a penguin, lecturing him probably about job loss.
I just don't get it. All right, Ron, we're up against our last break. Want to remind our listeners they get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@verisage.com. Website, again, is The Soul of Enterprise. Show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. But right now, a word from our sponsors, especially our dear friends at Woodard.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Okay, Ed. I just got one more point I want to make, and then
okay,
we can go into Wile E. Coyote. Where'd it go? Oh, crap. Oh, yeah. Okay, ready, Jordan.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking Juche for Dummies. And Ed, if exports are great and imports are bad, then like Bastiat said, we should sink all the ships at sea. America first into the ocean. The other thing that Trump always points to is the McKinley administration. And now during his administration, yes, we had incredibly high tariffs, at least relative to, most of the time in our country's history. But we also had during McKinley massive waves of immigration. So my question is, was that a good time for America or a bad time? Mm-hmm. I mean, these things are so self-canceling.
Yeah.
These arguments that they try and make on the other side. The other thing is, I saw J.D. Vance talk about, look, if we can't control what products come into the country, it would be the same thing as if we had open borders, right? Free trade in goods is the same thing as free trade in immigration, right? Open borders. And that's a category error. There is a difference between people and things, right? It's kind of the same thing with people kill, not guns. We're smart enough to make that distinction, but cars don't take citizenship oaths, and 2x4s don't commit rape, and chips don't vote, and steel doesn't have babies. People and things are different. Now, you can have arguments about immigration. Should it be open borders? I'm thrilled to have that argument, but let's accept the reality that people coming into the country is not exactly the same thing as goods and services coming into the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's completely different in that way. And how do we even begin to measure stuff like knowledge and services then? I mean, and that's the absurd thing. All of this, Ron, really boils down, I think, ultimately to something that we have railed against for years and years and years and years, and that is zero-sum game thinking.
That's exactly what it is.
It really just comes down to the complete misunderstanding that in every transaction there's a winner and there's a loser, and that is absolutely how Donald Trump thinks. If he has an ideology, it only has two planks: tariffs and no immigration. That's it. Those are the only two planks of Trump's ideology. Everything else is completely specious and is up to whatever whim of the day is. But those are the two things that he has always been consistent on, going back to the 1980s when he was the real estate developer in New York City.
Yeah. And Ed, I almost forgot to make this point, but what I learned from Trump this week is looking at our trade deficit country by country is the exact same thing as looking at a P&L. So for our accounting friends out there and listeners, this is absurd. I mean, to equate a trade deficit with a P&L is absolute lunacy. I don't, but it's that zero-sum thinking again.
Yeah, it's zero. It's not understanding that we get something in return. I don't know. Maybe we should have just left it at the opening sentence of this is what we said. It's just completely asinine. There's no there really is no defending it, and it just is funny to see so many people twist themselves into pretzels over it, and it still make no sense.
Yeah. So last week, Ed, Craig brought up on Overtime the Acme Inc. movie.
Yes.
And I did go out and watch the trailers, kicking the ass. It just reminded me how good the Roadrunner cartoons were. But Jeffrey Blehar in National Review wrote this. He said, Donald Trump, who, convinced of his own superior intellect, has crowbarred open a newly delivered crate of Acme trade policy, unboxed Peter Navarro circa 1996, and strapped on his goggles and rocket shoes to catch that elusive, slippery trade deficit once and for all. And he made this whole analogy between Trump and Wile E. Coyote. And then he said, he cited the rules of the laws and rules of Roadrunner. The guy who created the Roadrunner, Chuck Jones, wrote a book called Chuck Amuck, The Life and Times of an Animated Cartoonist. And in that book, he published that the Roadrunner cartoons had to abide by some strict rules. And number one was the Roadrunner cannot harm the coyote except by going beep, beep. Mm-hmm. He says, no outside force can harm the coyote, only his own ineptitude or the failure of the Acme products. The coyote could stop any time if he were not a fanatic. No dialogue ever except beep, beep. The Roadrunner must stay on the road. Otherwise, logically, he could not be called the Roadrunner. All action must be confined to the natural environment of the two characters, the Southwest American desert. And all material, tools, weapons, or mechanical convenience must be obtained by the Acme Corporation, from the Acme Corporation. Whenever possible, make gravity the coyote's greatest enemy. The coyote is always more humiliated than harmed by his failures. I just think that's the perfect analogy for what Trump's doing. And then I didn't know this, by the way, in August, September, and October of 1982, National Lampoon published a 3-part series chronicling the lawsuit Wile filed against the Acme Corporation over the faulty items they sold him in his pursuit of the Roadrunner. Even though the Roadrunner appeared as a witness for the plaintiff, the coyote still lost the lawsuit. I want to hear AO deal with that lawsuit.
Yeah. We brought this up. We talked about this earlier, but you said that in one of the rules was they don't talk, right? There's no dialogue.
Yes.
But the original Wile E. Coyote appeared on an episode with Bugs Bunny. And that's where he started. And then I guess they brought the Roadrunner in, and he has this whole setup where Wile E. Coyote shows up in front of Bugs's rabbit hole and puts up a door, knocks on it, and Bugs answers the door, and the coyote hands him a business card and says, Wile E. Coyote, super genius. And of course, the end of the episode ends with a train coming through, and then I guess then they spun that off to be with the Roadrunner. But yes, I'm a super genius. And instead, what we have is somebody who is acting, and this is a Jonah Goldberg line, who is acting as if he were an escape monkey from a cocaine study. I mean, the on again, off again nature of this, the head spinning nature of this. What's the market doing today? Oh, up today, but it could be down. He could say something that drives this through the floor. It is insane. And I'll go back to my opening point, which is I am more scared not of the tariff policy, but of the fact that we've invested all of this power in one person in this country. That scares me more than just the tariff per se. But go back to, and it's this Juche. It's this, what are we doing here?
Yep. And just to talk politics for the last couple of minutes, Ed, if the Republican Congress doesn't take this back from Trump and reassert its authority to rule on these tariffs, like is in Senator Rand's bill. He said Congress, has to give authority before any tariff can be put into effect. They're going to get their clock cleaned in the midterms. They're going to get wiped out like they've never been wiped out before. This is a ball peen to the crotch of America by this guy, and I'm telling you, this is he's playing with fire here. I mean, we live in a global economy, and everything from your iPhone to your computer to your car is full of parts from around the world, even your pencil, and I don't get, what's the line? Good economic policy makes good politics, and bad economic policy makes lousy politics. Ask Joe Biden, and Jimmy Carter. This is going to wipe the Republicans out.
Yeah, well, and
rightfully so.
Yeah, and the first George Bush, ask him too. And that's why Clinton came on board, right? So
even Obama, because Obama in the midterm got wiped. I mean, Obama he converted 1,000+ seats to the other side. I mean, he was the best thing for the other side.
Oh, you mean in state legislatures as well?
As well, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, I don't see this any well. Unless, look, maybe he gets religion over the course of the next, 90 days? Did he pause it for?
Yep, 90 days.
And says and comes to the understanding that, this was a big mistake, and then figures out a way to just declare victory and move on. Like I think that, and everything's going to zero except for China. Okay. Yeah, and then we can have that conversation.
And I can live with that. I mean, if he wants to put 125% on China, great. Okay. But man, take all these other ones off and stop with this. And the thing is, I think the market did exert some influence on him, because that's something, it's hard to argue with the market, And as Jonah Goldberg, or I'm sorry, as Kevin Williamson said, none of us are as smart of all of us, but none of us is as dumb as all of us. This is a policy that none of us as individuals would select for our own lives.
No.
And the market reflects that. And Trump does listen to the market. So I don't know. I can't read his mind.
I don't want to. All right, Ron. Well, we'll got something new coming up next week, but I guess I'll see you in 167 hours.
Sounds good. This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business in the Knowledge Economy, sponsored by Woodard. Building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week, folks, on Friday at noon Pacific time. In the meantime, check us out at thesoulofenterprise.com. We'll have full show notes about topics we talked about today, as well as the books we mentioned. Also, you can contact Ed or me at asktsoe@verisage.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.
All clear. Great show.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.
No problem. Hope you all have a great weekend.
You too.
Okay. And I need to bug out for a second. I'm going to transfer I got some disconcerting texts that I need to deal with.
Okay.
So I'm just going to make you the host, Ron, and I may join back up with you, but I've got to make a phone call.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Ron, I had no idea that my Wile E. Coyote reference from last week would come back and be a real thing.
Absolutely hilarious. The 4-minute or whatever clip, trailer from that movie, which is not coming out to like 26.
Oh, because they killed it, and then another distribution company stepped up and said, "We'll do it."
I couldn't. It's an hysterical clip. Have you seen the trailer? Oh my God!
Oh, many times. Yeah.
He just gets the crap beat out of him. It's just a riot.
Yeah.
Just
and that article in National Review, the author you mentioned, I forget his name, Peter.
Jeffrey Blahar, I think it is.
Jeffrey. Okay.
Yeah.
I tagged him on Twitter as well.
Oh, okay.
That article is in our show notes, and it is not gated. At least it wasn't for me. So you can read that article in its entirety, including that amazing quote.
It's hysterical. And he cites the Wikipedia page of the creator of the Roadrunner to get the rules. The rules are disputed. There was one of the authors or one of the writers for the first few Roadrunner shows said, I never saw these rules. So there's a debate about the rules, but the rules are hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so here's a trivia question for you. You guys mentioned Coca-Cola in the show. Well, you mentioned North Korea and trade with them. We don't trade with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Name the two countries in the world where Coca-Cola is not officially sold. You can guess one immediately.
Yeah, North Korea.
The other one sort of surprised me.
Is it Russia?
Cuba.
Oh, Cuba.
Yeah.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, one of Coca-Cola's first manufacturing plants was in Cuba. But in the 1960s, obviously, they had to shut it down.
And if I remember right, it was Pepsi who cracked the old Soviet Union first before Coke, and that was a big coup for them. Yeah. But I've read about the Coke. They have something else on their shelf. It kind of looks like the Coke logo, but it's not. But people think it's made by Coke.
Black
I don't know.
Market Coca-Cola. It's similar to the Coca-Cola here in Atlanta. We have a large, primarily Mexican, but just Latin population in general here in Atlanta. We've got a lot of chicken farms, right? And so we have a lot of Mexican Coke, is what I call it.
Right.
And it's Coca-Cola manufactured without high fructose corn syrup, and instead it uses pure cane sugar. And Ron, it's delicious.
It is.
Compared to the crap that we drink here in the States that has the high fructose corn syrup. And you can find it in a lot of your mercados and supermercados around town, where I go to get 3 tacos for $7 at lunch, because those are also delicious, right? And they're usually in the glass bottles.
Right. Yeah. Same with me. I can get the real Coke from my Mexican restaurant that's near me that I love. Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting bit of trivia regarding Coca-Cola. And then we have you seen any of the related to tariffs and the idea that Dave Chappelle doesn't want to make Nikes, he wants to wear them, which is
Yes.
a great stand-up, and I didn't put it in the show notes, but it is awesome, right?
It is.
Everything he's done recently is pretty decent. Related to that, uh, the Chinese propaganda machine, and I'm being general about it because I don't know who or what, has created a series of AI videos showing Americans turning screwdrivers in factories, presumably here in the United States, to
Yes.
show what it would look like as 50-year-old white men manufacture goods in the United States, and they are hilarious because
Hilarious.
that chasm is absolutely there, and you can see it and you can tell it's fake, but it's just funny.
It is. There's that meme of Trump sitting next to Vance at sewing machines with the Nike swoosh logo and, make America great again. Just like, oh my God, really? You want to do this? I guess some manufacturing jobs, like if you were in a chip factory, high tech, maybe working on the robots, whatever, that would be cool. But I don't think most parents want their kids in a manufacturing plant, even one as sophisticated as the BMW plant.
Oh, which is amazing. You've
It
toured
is
it.
amazing.
It's
Yep.
awesome. And this is for those listening, this is the BMW plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And it is an amazing facility. It is actually off the grid. Did you know that? They
Yes.
manufacture their own power. They have their own recycling center. Like they've done a lot of really cool things.
They have.
What I'm reminded of is the TSMC plant in Arizona, the manufacturing
Mm,
plant that TSMC has completed and is currently producing. You would think that something that can make some of not quite the cutting edge chips, but it's close enough, right? A facility in the US that can make cutting edge chip technology, manufacture cutting edge chip technology, would employ tens of thousands of people. And that's just not the case. There's like 1,000 people that work there. And
wow.
because it's so automated. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Good for those 1,000 people. That's 1,000 jobs, right? But
Sure.
modern day manufacturing, particularly in the tech sector, is more about automation than it is throwing bodies at a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And if my son, for example, came home and said, Dad, I don't want to go to college. I want to get started with my life. I want to start earning money. What do I do? It's pretty obvious. I'd
Yeah.
say, you're going into the trades, brother. And by the way, I'm going with you. We're going to start a company. You're going to be a plumber or an electrician or an HVAC professional, and we're going to make some money.
Yeah. Mike Rowe taught me that. He talks about this all the time. In fact, he set up some type of foundation to help kids just go right into the trades. And I think that's awesome because, yeah, we're always going to need those folks. I don't care
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I loved the episode today. I was not disappointed in you and Ed. I'm just disappointed in general that the natural conclusion we should all be drawing has not been drawn, right? And I'm with you that there seems to be a lack of a backbone, although arguably politically in general, this isn't a right or left thing. We seem to have lost that backbone a long time ago. And there's most definitely a concern shared with Ed, myself, many
Mm,
others, you included, that we have been ceding power to the executive branch for far too long, and it was only a matter of time before somebody was smart enough to take advantage of that.
yeah. So true. It's the closest thing we have to a king
Yeah,
or have had to a king. Yeah.
yeah.
It's disturbing.
There is a gentleman by the name of Dan Carlin who does some podcasting. I don't know if you know
Oh,
Dan
yeah. The
Carlin.
history guy.
The history guy, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so Dan used to have a separate podcast feed for a show he did intermittently called Common Sense. And it feels to me like I was introduced to it by Robert Wood, right?
Mm,
And it feels to me that he would turn the microphone on when he really needed to get something off of his chest, and it would become common sense, right?
hmm.
He did another episode finally about a month ago, and it had been years since he did one. I think the last one he did was immediately after January 6th, right?
Mm,
And in the common sense episode, what he is getting at is that we have ceded too much power to the executive branch, and that's why we're in this business. Like, that's the conclusion he draws, much like with Ed. It's not about the individual, right? Not at all, in fact.
Right.
If you
Right.
really take a step back, this little 4-year period that we're in for Trump 2.0 is a blip in the grand scheme of things. But if you zoom out a little bit, since you could argue Reagan, we've been ceding more and more power.
So true. Hey, Ed.
Hello, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
Ed,
So-
you missed my TED Talk.
Oh, good.
We've been talking about everything, Wile E. Coyote, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Greg, were you aware that Wile E. Coyote went after Bugs Bunny? I wasn't. Did you know about that?
I did not, but thanks to the magic of the YouTubes, that video is the last entry in the show notes for today. Highly
Fantastic.
genius.
Is it the whole show?
I don't
No,
know.
it's just a little clip.
Oh,
Yeah.
just the clip that you showed me, Ed. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
His business card says, "Has brain, will travel."
I've got one more thing for you, Craig. Give me a minute. I got to find it. It's about deep research. This is out of The Economist, which you read, right?
I do.
So-
I try to read it regularly. It's one of the few publications I try to read regularly.
Okay, then you might have saw this because this is February 15th because I'm way behind on my Economist. But, you know, we talked about Tyler Cowen saying that I think the quality as comparable to having a good PhD level research assistant and sending a person away with a task for a week or two. He's talking about the AI's deep research, $200 a month. And then The Economist says, how good of a research assistant is deep research? And then they go on to kind of poo-poo it and say, well, you know, it's not great. It's only going to give you the majority opinion. It's not going to draw out on new ideas or ideas that are on the edge. It's only going to give you the consensus. Basically, it's not going to get you to the edge. And a third problem, the most serious, is you're going to find yourself taking intellectual shortcuts, thinking can only be done by writing. I don't know. What do you think of that? I thought that was really interesting. They said that Cowen has got a history of hyping new technology.
Yeah, I can't disagree with the opinion, and it is all opinion at this point. I can't disagree with the opinion, and I am a fan of thinking. Right. In other words, I don't believe that in your role, in whatever that role is, whatever your job is, whatever your career is, if you don't carve out time to think and you believe that you're paid to do and produce, if you're a knowledge worker, you're selling yourself short, and
Right.
you're going to face a career deficit at some point because you haven't carved off the time to think, to learn, to reflect upon what your life lessons have taught you, right? And with something like deep research, to have that PhD level, and we keep using that phrase, and I think you know what I mean, generally speaking, to have that PhD level of reference at your fingertips, well, I'm not sure we're there yet. You ask a PhD student, right? Who's in the final moments of earning their doctorate, right? Ask them if the AI could have done what they've done over the last however many years of their life, because their PhD journey didn't start when they decided to get a PhD. It probably started long before that, right? So I can't disagree with it. At the same time, we're in such a cool moment again in technology, similar to the internet when it was first launched or something along those lines, in which it just changes so fast, and it's fun. And I'm not a seersayer. I could eat my words tomorrow, and maybe it is that good, but I can't disagree with the opinion today. We are human beings. To the root of your show, we have souls. We think, and that's not something I see us duplicating with ones and zeros anytime soon. Although I am very excited, more recently than not, about the idea that we would take some of the what we perceive to be the brilliant workings of artificial intelligence. This goes back to the technology trend show that we did together, and marry that artificial intelligence with hardware, robot style. Uh, That to me, a company that can crack consumer demand, and I don't even know what that consumer demand is at this point, by marrying artificial intelligence with robotics, is one of the next great companies, in my opinion. I can think of all sorts of applications. One of them is in an effort to combat and this might make things worse, but I'm just going to throw it out there, in an effort to combat the fact that more and more people today feel lonely. And when they feel lonely, they feel despondent. And when they feel despondent, they make rash decisions. You know the trail that would go down. These and I'm not advocating for the idea that all of us would have these hardware AI psychologists that we would speak to on a regular basis, but you could see an application for that amongst the elderly, maybe amongst the young, although I would argue against that because their brains are still too malleable and that's not something they need to be regularly exposed to, but certainly amongst the elderly, right? Self-driving cars for the elderly, I think, is an amazing technology. I want us to get there faster. We've all had moments in time when we've had to deal with a relative, either directly or indirectly, that shouldn't be driving anymore. That's not a difficult conversation. That's an impossible conversation.
It's a brutal conversation, yeah.
And so I am very encouraged by this stuff. But to your question from before, I can't argue against that opinion, and I think a PhD student today would argue against it, but I don't know.
I did talk about an article out of The Economist, I think this was last year, that I think it was a rest home or a series of rest homes that were doing experiments with AI-based robotics and interacting with the people that lived there. It was really fascinating. They said some of it was really cool, other parts of it were kind of stupid, hard for them to play cards or whatever, but it was really interesting article. I think you're right. I think there's some great uses for that.
And we'll see that first, probably in Japan.
Japan,
They've always,
age.
They've always been on the forefront of robotics technology, just in general, and they have an aging population. So they respect their elders, right? So it is all of the cards seem to align there. I will say that here in the States, from a robotics perspective, we're not exposed too often to robotics technology. I mean, Ed and I have our robot vacuums, but I mean that's we're not breaking new ground there, right? I was at a restaurant not too terribly long ago, and my kids love this restaurant. It's a revolving sushi restaurant. So if you've seen these things
with the boats,
yeah, the sushi is on a belt, and it travels the entirety of the restaurant, and you just take the sushi you want, and it's like $1 a plate or something like that, right? Well, when you sit down and somebody walks up to you and says, "What can I get you to drink?" This robot with effectively an iPad as a face, meant to look like a traveling cat, wanders up to your table with your drinks and your soy sauce and your wasabi and your ginger. And on the screen where the cat's eyes previously were, it's, table number, your items are on shelf number 2. And you take the items off of shelf number 2, and then this robot goes back into the corner and goes away. And that's a great, not cutting edge, just small consumer example of robotics that we do run into potentially in the future and on a regular basis in restaurants. But it's a fun example.
Yeah, no, that's neat. Yeah, speaking of robotics, I've been driving a lot in San Francisco. I had no idea until I got right up on it that the Waymo, I think you took Waymo, right, Ed, in San Francisco.
Yep.
Not only are they driverless, which I already knew, but those cars are Jaguars.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did not know that. The other thing is I was at a light and it was, turning yellow and then it turned red. And to the left of me, the only one was a Waymo. And I thought, well, fuck him. I can jump in front of him and he won't go. And I did. And then I thought, wait a minute, he's got cameras all over the fucking place. Probably going to get a ticket,
No. No, I don't know if they're connected to law enforcement yet, but
I wonder.
Yeah. Just jumping back on the whole PhD Tyler Cowen thing. The one thing that I would add is in Tyler's defense, I think what he was saying, I think he said average grad student. It was the work that an average grad student would work, which, okay. Yep. And look, and nobody's saying that it's ready to win a Nobel Prize. Right. So the edge case thinking that, right. That's not what we're after here. Right. We're after doing something that is going to take someone who is a non-expert in some field and allow them to quickly get up to speed on a topic at a fairly surface level, but also with enough detail behind it that it can be helpful for them. Right. So that's what deep research is about. It's not okay, we've created this PhD person. It's like, okay, I'm a fairly intelligent person and I want to learn more about this subject. Give me the deepest research that you can possibly do on that subject, and then you can do it in 20 minutes rather than me spending 8 weeks to do it.
Right. No, that's a good point.
I am way behind in my podcast listening because a lot of that is done in the car, and also when I'm getting ready for my day or getting ready to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And instead of listening to podcasts, I open ChatGPT on my phone, I put it on voice mode, and I talk to it. And I have conversations about things that I'm interested in or ideas that I have that I want to flesh out. And so my habits are really changing. Like when I'm in the car, I look like a crazy person. I'm just
having a conversation with ChatGPT. Huh.
And it's fascinating because you can interrupt it and it's fine with that. And you say, no, that's not actually what I meant. Let's go a little bit deeper around this idea in the topic, not the path that you just went down. It understands, it responds. It's been really fun over the last couple of weeks. It's a habit now. Like I get in my car, I turn on ChatGPT.
Yeah, I did show prep for this show using it and just prompting it with all these different things, and it was a blast. It came back, oh, I love where you're going with this. That's right. We could do a cold opening, would you like it? And it wrote us a script for a cold opening for the show. It was, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. Had some funny lines.
This is great, Ron. You're so smart.
Yeah, no, I know. It's kissing your ass.
So to the self-driving cars, this is fascinating to me. When you say not to the three of us, because we've had some in-depth conversations about this, but when you ask, I would say the average consumer, what brand of automobile they most closely associate with self-driving, who are they going to say?
Tesla.
Yeah.
And it's Waymo.
Yeah.
All the way. Tesla has fielded exactly zero fully self-driving automobiles. Waymo's in 4 cities and going to 10 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it change lanes in traffic, and I'm not going to say it's like a New York aggressive driver, but it's navigating, around parked Amazon trucks or whatever, and it's anticipating and it's moving over. And it's like, because I followed one up a long stretch of San Francisco, and it's like, damn, this thing it knows what's going on around it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's good. They went to the LiDAR technology, and Musk was like, nope, not going to do that.
Not going to do that. Yeah. Apparently it's still really expensive, the LiDAR stuff, but yeah.
I do remember and Ed, you remember this as well, the early days of full self-driving. It was either, grandma level driving, or it was drunk 13-year-old level driving. There wasn't a lot of in between. And I found the vehicle today, and I still use what Tesla classifies as full self-driving every single day. And that's primarily because I don't have cruise control anymore in my car, because Tesla has overridden what you would call adaptive cruise control with full self-driving, because I'm on the beta program, right? So I use it every single day because I don't want to speed and I don't want to get a ticket, and I'm afraid that I will if it's just me driving the car, right? And I have noticed it is getting much more aggressive in a good way. right? Because the people around me are aggressive compared to where the full self-driving software was 2, 3 years ago. And it's able to handle a lot more edge cases, but I still come back to the fact that humans are erratic and unpredictable. And as I'm teaching my 15-year-old, so my son is 15, getting ready to start driving his own vehicle this year, right? And as I'm teaching him, I keep telling him that you never trust the intent of the drivers around you, you trust their actions. If they have their blinker on and their intent is to turn left, until they turn left, they are not turning left, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
And so I find humans and our erratic behavior still the single most complex problem any self-driving platform has to deal with.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, you got to. My dad used to teach me you have to look at their tires. See if it's kind of like looking at the eyes, right?
Yeah. Well, at any rate, so you guys have a bonus episode to do, and I have to run to a neighborhood near us where all of the prom pictures are being taken. It's my daughter's senior prom tonight, so
That's early. That's early for prom.
One of the many last things that she will do in high school, and this is one of them. So I want to be a part of that. No offense to you guys, but I'm out of here.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Enjoy. All right. Take care, Greg. All right. Oh, Ron, you have to turn off the recording because you're the host.
Oh.
All right, or just grant host back. Let's.
Oh, yeah. Okay. See, how do I do that? Under more?
Wait, let's see if I can do it. Take host back. Let me see if I can. Let's just hang up and start over, and I'll catch the bonus.